I just want to show you the new version of the historical weather analysis module in Weatherwise, which is the second report on the list called Historical Weather. And I want to demonstrate this with a really interesting thing that's coming up in Ottawa pretty soon. So it's called the Freshet. And effectively, this is the big post-winter melt that will cause the river discharge in the Ottawa city of Ottawa to go absolutely crazy. So if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see Ottawa is on the river, and it actually has a massive river basin, one of the largest in Canada. And what you can do with the historical weather module is you can pick any location on Earth. I'm obviously using Ottawa in this case. I can select whatever data and date that I want to start this analysis from until whatever end date. I've just picked the maximum, which is basically 48 years. And I've picked river discharge from our big lists, but you can also pick snowfall, some wind direction, wind speed max, etc. And I've generated the analysis. And we can see, and actually the data doesn't actually go all the way back to the 80s in this particular case. So the very first piece of data we have is kind of around 1996. But what you can probably see very loosely is that there is a downward trend in the size of discharge. So the very largest peak we're seeing is in 1998, with subsequent years much lower. Obviously, if climate change is causing less snow to fall and warmer winters, then maybe the snow is kind of melting on an ongoing basis, and so there's less of this kind of switch from winter into spring. And so what you get is kind of this daily data set for the whole 48-year period, or in this case, since 96. But we then bundle that and wrap that up into a kind of a standard year for this location. So you can see, if we look at the full data set, we've got a pretty clear kind of melt happening in April. But an interesting thing that is happening now, so if I go and switch this to 10 years, for example, and generate this report, what we're going to see is that there is actually now a kind of double melt, and there's a more random pattern that we're going to see in the data. So we can now see slightly more clearly on a daily basis. We can kind of pick out individual days when the significant amounts of melt is occurring. We can see some are happening in March, some are happening in April and May. But there is a pattern that we can see, but it's most stood out here where what was an April peak is now kind of got some early things happening in February, some things happening in March, and then all the way down to May, you can kind of see some of this kind of surge of melt water coming down the river basin. So there's lots of different reasons for that, but the usefulness of this module is that you can pick and choose the data that you want for any of these different types of modules, and it's going to give you a report now in a lot shorter amount of time, and with a lot greater freedom around what analysis period that you are picking. So head to the Weatherwise platform and check out the historical weather report, so that you can check out the weather in your particular location and start to understand some of the interesting patterns, just like the Ottawa Freshet. Thanks for listening.